The
Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros, and to invite him to address the Assembly. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset I wish to convey to you my warmest congratulations upon your brilliant election to the presidency of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. You are the fourth woman to have been elected to the helm of this august assembly. This represents yet another step forward towards greater women's representation within our institution, and I'm firmly convinced that the scope of your experience will be harnessed to see to the smooth conduct of proceedings, and this will help to breathe momentum to ensure that we make progress towards our goals. I'm all the more pleased at the fact that my government has made the advancement of women a priority. This also represents an opportunity for me to congratulate and thank your predecessor for the delivery of his mandate, for which he has earned our full recognition, that of my delegation and that of myself, for his remarkable commitment during the 72nd session. Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this year, 2018, witnessed upheaval, transitions, change, and manifold difficulties with varying roots, which we must continue to tackle in a concerted manner, whether the causes are due to climate, the economy, social, political, migration-related, health-related, or others. These events should further galvanize the international community, which should stand firmly together more than ever before, more committed and more determined than ever before. The current international context is all the more demanding and trying. It requires almost immediate reactivity. The engagement of all of us, hence, is necessary. This, given that all of these situations are liable to imperil peace and security. This is what genuinely endows the United Nations with its universal nature. Madam President, distinguished delegates, the theme chosen for the 73rd session, making the United Nations an organization for all, a global force based on shared responsibility for peaceful, fair, and sustainable societies, will only have meaning if words are translated into action. Presently, it is necessary to have shared responsibilities to surmount the challenges which we face. It is incumbent upon us to begin by making our organization fairer, more effective and efficient, by endowing it with the necessary resources to discharge its mission. To that end, the long-sought reforms are necessary, specifically at the main bodies of the United Nations, where delays stoke perceptions of injustice and frustration among those regions who perceive themselves to be least represented. These need to be implemented in order to meaningfully and faithfully reflect the current geopolitical reality, specifically vis-a-vis the African continent. In this regard, the Union of Comoros reiterates its alignment with the Azali Consensus to grant at least 2 permanent seats to Africa, with, of course, the right of veto. It is by having the same opportunities to be able to invest in peace, to contribute to peace, security, health, education, democracy, and rule of law. That is how we will be able to ensure harmonious development for our countries. That is how we will be able to attain the Sustainable Development Goals, which represent the bedrock of the new era which our dear organization is entering. Furthermore, my country welcomes the relevance of the Secretary General's proposals through the reforms underway. These are to better reflect countries' priorities and needs, as well as will ensure some better operation of our institution. However, this streamlining under no circumstances should diminish the presence of the United Nations on the ground. Hence, it is important to stress that vigilance will be necessary to see to it that financing will be predictable, to see to it that the poorest countries, specifically small island developing states, for those states not to have to assume a too heavy a financial burden. Distinguished audience, I wish to commend the initiatives undertaken by our initiative to grant particular importance to the consideration of the issues related to diseases such as tuberculosis and non-communicable diseases. Is there a need to recall the fact that some of these diseases no longer solely afflict the poorest countries, insofar as these diseases are now resurfacing in the so-called wealthiest countries? It is incumbent upon us to step up our action worldwide, especially by making consistent means available at the country's level. It is important for us to attribute importance to these issues. We must adopt tailored, effective, efficient strategies to combat these diseases. Madam, distinguished audience, the situation in the Middle East is gravely alarming. Yemen, Syria, and Palestine, more than ever before, are in need of steadfast support from our organization. In this regard, I wish to voice the greatest gratitude, the greatest concern of my government in the light of the proliferation of random measures that have been undertaken in recent months, random measures against the Palestinian people, the consequences of which not only significantly erode regional stability, but the consequences also chip away at collective efforts to arrive at a two-state solution. For this reason, the Union of Comoros reiterates its unstinting support for the Palestinian people. We remain convinced that any viable solution to this conflict must hinge on the creation of two states, Israeli and Palestinian, living side by side along secure and internationally recognized pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. Yet, our concerns are all the more justified in the fact that, unfortunately, we are bearing witness to the international community having become, little by little, a spectator in this peace process, a peace process that has been bogged down in persistent inertia, which is liable to undermine the possibility of a fair and lasting resolution to this crisis. In the light of events and recent positions that have been taken, member states need to be self-reflective in order to help to bring about a consensus geared towards building a new mediation mechanism that will finally rekindle the peace process. In this regard, I laud the adoption in December 2017 of the resolution calling for respect for the status of Jerusalem, as well as the resolution adopted in June by the majority of member states, requesting that the Secretary General submit proposals about ways to ensure security, protection, and well-being for the Palestinian people, as well as recommendations about an international protection mechanism for Palestinian civilians. Along the same lines, I wish to draw the attention of all to the difficulties plaguing the Rohingya people. These are innocent people. They have been subjected to attacks and persecution, which flies in the face of the values enshrined in the United Nations Charter. In this regard, I wish to formally call upon this august assembly to shoulder its responsibility in order to deliver assistance to this population in great danger. Ladies and gentlemen, turning to the question of Western Sahara, we welcome the adoption of by the UN Security Council of Resolution 2414, a resolution which calls for efforts to be undertaken to arrive at a pragmatic political solution, a realistic and lasting solution which calls upon neighboring states to fully cooperate with the United Nations. The Union of Comoros wishes to thank the United Nations Secretary General and to thank his special envoy for having managed to revitalize a political process on the basis of those parameters that have been set out by the Security Council since 2007. The Union of Comoros welcomes the meaningful and credible efforts of the Kingdom of Morocco to arrive at a definitive political solution. We extend our support for the Moroccan Initiative of Autonomy. Madam, distinguished audience, to make international peace and security prosper requires ongoing efforts on the part of all. This is a fruit of concessions. Given the current circumstances, the risks of nuclear detonation are real. It is our duty to protect present and future generations from this danger, the danger posed by nuclear weapons use. The terrorist threat continues also to gain traction worldwide. Unfortunately, no country has been shielded from this threat. Not a single day passes by without victims being reported somewhere in the world due to the madness of these evil individuals who exploit myriad ideologies to achieve their extremist ends and to perpetrate acts of untold barbarism. Some say that this is being done in the name of Islam. This is totally false. What Islam do they speak of? Islam, our Islam, is a religion of peace and of tolerance. Hence, it is urgent together to step up our mobilization, inter alia, through exchange of information and skills transfers in order to effectively eradicate this threat. To that end, sustained efforts should continue to achieve mutual understanding, which, beyond identifying the various components of terrorism, will lead to the establishment of a process of cooperation and action to curb the terrorist threat nationally, regionally, and internationally. Hence, it is incumbent upon us to extend our support to the G5 Sahel, to the UN forces, to the Barkhane force, together to combat terrorism in the area south of the Sahel. it is necessary to promptly find suitable solutions to the numerous injustices which continue to plague people worldwide. We need to prioritize dialogue and to act towards prevention. Why not be more involved in seeking ways and means to tackle delicate issues such as migration in a humane and expeditious way? In this regard, the Union of Comoros, through coordination of the African Group, has contributed to negotiations on a historic document. This is the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, the first document offering a full overview of management of migration, and this represents the first internationally recognized normative and regulatory framework for governing migration. This global compact reiterates our commitment to tackle socioeconomic causes and other decisive factors. Inter alia, through international cooperation, the obligation to protect and promote the human rights of migrants, and the fight against all forms of racism and discrimination against migrants. This compact, inter alia, advocates voluntary migration. It acknowledges the positive contribution of migrants and diasporas to the sustainable development of countries of origin, transit, and destination. Distinguished audience, in order to arrive at a safer world, it is important for us to pay greater attention to climate change, which continues to heighten in magnitude, specifically in small island developing states, including my country, the Union of Comoros. Indeed, by contributing to the destruction of the ecosystem and the destruction of biodiversity, climate change also is liable to worsen poverty and to exacerbate myriad diseases, and will lead to increases in climate-related migration, thereby undermining both our future and that of future generations. At the national level, ladies and gentlemen, major events have marked a decisive turning point in my country's socio-political evolution. This has been observed this year, and it deserves to be brought to the attention of this august assembly. Indeed, as I stated during my last intervention here at the United Nations in February 2018, we convened a national conference to take stock of 42 years of independence of the Union of Comoros. This initiative was propelled by civil society in the Comoros. Not only did it benefit from support and accompaniment of the government and people of Comoros, but also from the multifaceted support of development partners and numerous international and regional organizations, such as the African Union, the League of Arab States, the International Organization of Francophonie, and the United Nations. I wish to renew my sincerest gratitude to the United Nations Secretary General for having dispatched eminent persons during the opening and closure of this conference. The conclusions drawn from this national forum highlighted the need to redefine and to reshape a new institutional framework. This, by enhancing national unity, will help to pave the way for the emergence of Comoros by 2030. Therefore, a referendum was held on 30 July last, and a new constitution was adopted. We fully embrace these processes of reform that were called for by the Comoran people. Hence, I decided to shorten my mandate and to organize, pursuant to the new constitution, to organize early national and regional elections. To that end, I would formally call upon development partners and all friendly countries of the Comoros to support us as we seek to surmount this new challenge. And I remain convinced that, as is a custom, your valuable support will lead to the conduct peacefully and transparently of elections. Turning to the Comoran island of Mayotte, A popular unrest last March led to the de facto authorities of the country de facto expelling Comoran people en masse from the 3 other islands. The conditions of their expulsion forced my government to oppose this unilateral decision, all the more so given that many of these individuals are adolescents who have become children, homeless children, since their families were driven from the Mayotte in the same conditions which we denounce today. These are abandoned children, as I mentioned, abandoned since the events in Mayotte by their parents without any supervision, have now become a genuine threat not just for the island but also for the rest of the archipelago and even for the whole region. The root of the misunderstanding between France and the Union of Comoros stems from the situation which has been compounded by the shock felt by the Comoran people of the 3 other islands as they observe the difficult detention conditions of their fellow citizens in Mayotte. I wish here to state my government's commitment, the commitment of the government which I lead, to dialogue with France, to resolve our present and potential future differences. We are a peaceful country. That is our nature. Notwithstanding the manifold disturbances which punctuated our shared history, we have historic and cultural links with France. For this reason, we are determined to progress towards arriving at a fair and propitious solution to this problem. From this rostrum, I wish to pay a spirited homage to the Comoran people, all Comoran people, for their unanimous support and solidarity in the light of the position of the government in this latest twist of the question of Mayotte. This is the fruit of proactive, measured, and effective diplomacy, which fully accounted for all issues related to this file. I commend the commitment of the Comoran men and women alongside the government, which has spared no effort, so that together with France we can unravel this unfortunate situation, to resolve this crisis and to break the deadlock on the basis of relevant UN resolutions. To conclude, I have great faith in the French authorities that together we will find a lasting solution to this disagreeable dispute among partners. To echo the late French President François Mitterrand, this which has lasted for far too long, for 2 countries with so much in common. On this issue, as with other issues addressed during this debate, ladies and gentlemen, heads of government and heads of state, our responsibility is to deliver on providing responses for in the Indian Ocean, in Africa, throughout the world. It is our duty to leave to future generations, to leave a world of peace, stability, and sustainable development. I hope to believe that we are capable of that. Thank you.
En nombre de la Asamblea.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Mr. Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.